Edgar Allan Poe was an American writer, poet, journalist, editor, and essayist. Considered one of the greatest and most influential American writers in history, Poe was the originator of the detective novel, horror fiction, and psychological genre. Best known for his short stories, a genre whose brevity allowed him to emphasize his theory of effects, according to which all the elements of the text must contribute to the achievement of a single effect. He gave the short story its letters of nobility, and he is considered the inventor of the detective story. Many of his stories figurate the genre of science fiction and fantasy. Born in Boston, Edgar Poe lost his parents in infancy and was taken in by John and Frances Allans of Richmond in Virginia, where he spent most of his early years, apart from a stint in England and Scotland in relative comfort. After a brief stint at the University of Virginia and a debut at the military career, Poe left the Allans. His literary career began only with the anonymous publication of a collection of poems entitled Tamerlane and other poems, signed only by a Bostonian. Poe moved to Baltimore, where he lived with his father's family and gave up poetry somewhat from prose. On July 1835, he became assistant editor of the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond, where he helped increase subscriptions and began to develop his own style of literary criticism. That same year, he married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia Clem. In January 1845, Poe published The Raven, which was an immediate success, but just 2 years later his wife Virginia died of tuberculosis. Poe considered remarrying, but no plans were made. On 7 October 1849, Poe died at the age of 40 in Baltimore. The causes of his death could not be determined and has been attributed variously to alcohol, drugs, cholera, rabies, heart disease, cerebral congestion. Of extraordinary importance is the writing of some tales considered to be the prototype of modern literature police. In addition, some of his works are considered ancestors of modern science fiction. Poe is also considered America's first alienated writer, having struggled for much his life with financial problems, alcohol and drugs abuse, and the lack of understanding from the public and critics of the time. Poe's influence has been and continues to be significant in the United States as in the world at large, not only in literature, but also in other artistic fields such as film and music, as well as in scientific fields. An American author, he is no exception to the proverb that no man is a prophet in his own country, for he was first recognized and championed by French authors, Baudelaire and Mallarmé in particular. And contemporary critics place him among the most remarkable writers of 19th century American literature. As one of the shortest of Poe's stories, the Oval Portrait consists of a brief one-paragraph story framed within a larger vignette whose main purpose is to establish the romantic Gothic mood in which the story occurs. The setting and the basis of the plot are surrounded in mystery. The narrator does not explain how or where he is wounded, and with his servant he enters and abandons, taking a castle that offers no more answer than the narrator. Dark gloom of a desert house is a classic background for a Gothic story, and the tapestry and strange architecture of the building give the narrator's choice of apartment a feeling of removal from the contemporary world. Nothing of consequence occurs during the night, but the detail provides a romantic feeling of loss that serves as an introduction to the story of the Oval Portrait. Oval portrait indicates the tension between the impermanence of life and the intransience of art. The portrait subject is full of life when she marries the painter, but she has, the great book says, the things which he spread upon the canvas were drawn from the checks of her who sat beside him. With his artistic powers, he has created a double of his wife. But was a William Wilson, both cannot simultaneously subsist for long without one defeating the other. The history of the painting suggests that although the metamorphosis from life to eternal art may create a masterful work of beauty that simulates life, the narrator is only deceived by his dream stupor and by the sudden reveal of the painting from the dark. A second, more intense look at the painting reveals the illusion, and similarly, the painter of the story ends by giving up his wife for a mere image. The destruction of loved ones is a common theme in many of poets' short stories, but unlike in poems' other story, the painter does not cause his wife death because of hate or any negative emotion. Instead, his passion for his art simply overwhelms him to the point where he can no longer see his wife except through the lens of his painting. Thus, the story associates art and creativity with decay not only within the story of the painting, but in the juxtaposition of spirit modern paintings, with rich yet thwarted and antique decoration within the narrator's room. The association of beautiful woman with death is prevalent in Poe's work and is especially prominent in the oval portrait. The painter's wife is a beautiful woman even before she agrees to model for her husband's portrait. But as she begins to fade away under the influence of the tower, she becomes pale and wan, and as a result could easily fit the romantic and Gothic ideal of the eternal woman. Finally, as she dies, the process of transfer between life and art completes, and her portrait captures her immortality beauty before it can fade away in old age and memory. Although the oval portrait centers on the painting of a woman, the painter's wife is essentially a passive figure within the story. Docile and loving, she is akin to the canvas of the portrait in that both are manipulated by the male painter, whose passion and drive make him the active figure in the history of the painting. Furthermore, the wife is never the active, observing character. She is only observed both by her husband, who is the truth of his art, sees her only as a model, and by the narrator, who peers at her image in order to while away the night. The wife's fate acts as a criticism of the male domination of art, but her compliance and submissiveness prevent her from serving as more than a silent warning.